Stitch, let's go. Come on, guys. Come on, kitty kitties. Come on. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily. This is the Saturday edition where I am covering the case in the UK of 29-year-old nurse Lucy Letby. She is on trial for the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 10 others. Now, there's multiple accounts of attempted murder on some of these 10 babies. So I think 22 charges in total. Yeah. So just to recap, in the first episode, which you'll see a link here or here, I covered the opening statements, and I covered a lot about the UK legal system. Got my kitty cat on today. Oh my God, it is colder than a witch's titty outside. Whoa! The wind. I just went out in my sweater today. I think it's a nice sunny day. I'm going to go out and walk the dogs. Man, was it cold. It actually snowed here the other night for about 5 minutes. Now, I'm not complaining because I want winter to last a couple more weeks because I'm going skiing in April, second week of April. So it can last a little bit longer, but after that, yeah, I've had enough. It's cold. Oh, man. All right. Let's talk about baby A and baby B, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the murders of the different infants in several episodes, because there's a lot going on here. A lot of witnesses to talk about. And what they're doing is, first of all, the babies are not identified by name. They are given letters, which I can understand that. Although they have names. I mean, I feel like it's a little, I don't know, cold to be calling them baby A and baby B. I mean, they have names, but for their protection, because some of them did survive. Baby B survived. Baby A did not. We're not naming them, and we're not naming their parents. So for each baby, we got the testimony of the parents, the grandparents, the experts, the nurses that were around Lucy Letby, the detectives telling us what the interview with Lucy Letby said about these particular babies. I mean, this is why this thing has lasted as long as it had. This trial started the beginning of November and is still going on currently. Yeah. They're in today 80 something, I think. Yeah, crazy. So the other thing that I wasn't clear about last time was doctors. So doctors in the UK, they can be doctors, they can be consultants. Now in the US, the consultant in the UK is equivalent to the US what we consider specialists. And in the US, a doctor will consult with a specialist. And yes, they are technically consultants, but in the UK, they're just called consultants. So they have these consultants that specialize in neonatal intensive care. So they're there on the day shift at this particular hospital for the most part. Then the night shifts, because this is a level 2 hospital, they're not giving the most intensive care a baby can receive. That goes on in a level 3 hospital. Now, they can give the most intensive care a baby can receive for up to 48 hours. So in which case, on the after-hour shifts, they had what they call registrars. And I believe that's equivalent, and I know some of my UK subscribers will correct me if I'm wrong, the registrars are equivalent to what we call residents. They've already graduated from medical school, but they're in training in hospitals, and they're highly qualified to do what they do. And some of them are becoming consultants eventually. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. Now, we already covered the different bands of nursing. And if you're confused about any of that, go back and watch episode 1 where I talk about that and the legal system. The other thing I learned about the legal system, in the US, the attorneys will have, after, because I used to be a lawyer, after our names, Esquire, Rebecca Schilling, Esquire, which I always like that. Kind of cool. But in the UK, they're called QC. That's what they were called up until Queen Elizabeth died. QC. Now they are called KC. So the attorneys they'll have their name like Rebecca Schilling, KC. King's Counsel. Used to be Queen's Counsel. Now it's King's Counsel. And these are the prosecutors. They work for the government. How am I seeing out of these glasses? Good gravy. Oh my gosh. Let me clean these glasses before I get to these babies. Now, trigger warning, this does have to do with the death of multiple babies born, that died shortly after they were born. Now, in addition to being an attorney, I was also a neonatal intensive care nurse for many years. Long story. I did nursing first, LPN, RN, neonatal intensive care. Then I burned out. I just could not watch any more babies die. And at that point, started working for lawyers, helping them with their cases. And then I went to law school, became a lawyer. Yeah, that's it. That's all you get. Okay. So Lucy Letby, 29 years old, she was a band 6 nurse. So pretty much equivalent to the education that I had, specialization in pediatrics and neonatal intensive care. Now, sometimes you'll hear comments that Lucy makes to her colleagues, texts that she's actually made to them, or comments that she's made to them, that she would rather work with the level 1 babies, because they had 4 rooms at the Countess of Chester Hospital where she worked. Room number 1 was the highest level of care. Now, she wanted to work in that room. Now, I can tell you, I worked at Broward General Hospital in Florida. Huge hospital. Level 1 trauma center, level 3 neonatal intensive care unit. And we had the different rooms, and it was okay to work in the other rooms, but I liked a challenge. Everyone likes to be challenged, and we liked to be where the action was. We wanted to be in room 1, where the action was, where you got to go to deliveries and where you got to do, work codes. And I mean, all the other rooms, you're just feeding babies. It's kind of boring. So I understand Lucy's mentality there. So I'm not going to fault her for that. You want to be challenged. So she did express that to several of her colleagues. So first, we're going to talk about twins A and B. So these are a set of fraternal twins. Twin A is a baby boy. Twin B is a baby girl. Now, twin A is the second. Wait a minute. Yeah. Twin B is born first, the girl. She's born first. Now, mom, prior to her pregnancy, had been diagnosed with a blood disorder, which they were monitoring during her pregnancy. And later, after the fact of what happened to her babies, determined it had nothing to do with what happened to her babies. No. There was one other thing I wanted to tell you, and it just flew out of my head. Okay. So, yeah, 31 weeks, did I say that? So most pregnancies are 40 weeks. So these babies were 31 weeks. That's pretty good. It's not great. I mean, ideal is 40 weeks. And the goal for these babies was to deliver them closer to term. However, this mother suffered about 28 weeks she started having preeclampsia, which is your blood pressure goes up high and they can't get back down, and they have to put you in a dark room and decrease your stress, and because it's very dangerous. So at 31 weeks, they couldn't control it anymore, and they said they did an emergency cesarean section where they cut the mom open and they take out the baby. So baby B comes out first, and the baby B is not doing well, struggling to breathe. They have to, floppy. When these babies come out, the first thing you do at 1 minute of age is you want to assess their APGAR. That's what you do in the U.S. I don't think they do that in the U.K. And some of the things you're looking at is, what is their color? What is their skin? Yeah, their color. What is their color? What is their, their level of skin tone? In other words, are they rigid? Are they floppy? Or are they, that kind of thing. What is their respiratory effort? What does their heart rate look like? So these things all go into the score, and it's from 0 to 10. So this baby sounded like it was somewhere in between 5 or 6, maybe. The baby came out floppy, and the color wasn't great, not a whole lot of effort to breathe. So what you do is you dry the baby off as quick as you can. You put it in the warmer, and you're stimulating that. When you're drying the baby off, it stimulates them to breathe sometimes. Then you're giving the baby oxygen. There's usually a doctor there with a couple of nurses. One nurse will be suctioning the baby to make sure there's nothing in the baby's mouth and nose. The other one's giving oxygen. And then the doctor assesses whether they need to intubate the baby, put a tube down into the baby's lungs to help the baby breathe. So that's what they did with baby B. They ended up intubating him and putting him on a ventilator. However, within a few hours of life, it's a she. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm struggling today. So within a few hours of life, this baby's doing pretty well. Comes off the ventilator, and then she's on what they call CPAP, which is, I take the CPAP at night. It's where you put these prongs in your nose, and the air goes, it's like a forced air. It goes in, and it keeps your airway open. Without it, I would die. Without this, what it does for these babies is it just stimulates them to breathe. It keeps their airway open, keeps them from lack of breathing, so to speak. Anyway, so this baby gets to be on the CPAP via these nasal prongs, similar to what I wear at night. We had no electricity one day, and I said, yeah, I'm going to go take a nap. Nothing to do when there's no electricity. And then I went, shit, I don't have my CPAP because it requires electricity. And my sister says, sleep without it. I'm like, oh, no. No. First of all, I would end up with a migraine so bad, and sore throat, headache. No, not doing it. Yeah, I wouldn't die per se, because you just wake yourself up when you stop breathing, and then you wake yourself up. But these babies can't do that, so they're on monitors and all this stuff like that. So then baby A comes out. Did I say that right? Baby B was the oldest. Baby B was the youngest. Now, I don't know why they weren't named opposite. Usually you name because the court named them. That's why. Okay. So baby B was baby number 1. Baby A was baby number 2. So baby number 2 comes out, and this baby's 3 pounds, almost 4 pounds. These are not tiny babies by any. They are, but not. There's babies that are a lot smaller. So these are. I consider them. That's a decent size. These babies are going to survive. We hope. Anyway, so baby A comes out and doing pretty well. Not doesn't need the oxygen, doesn't need a ventilator. They take the baby to ICU, and these babies are both born in the morning on the day shift. Now, mom comes to visit these two babies around 12, 1 o'clock. So going back to the trial and how I'm assimilating all this information, mom's testifying, dad is testifying, grandma's testifying, the experts are testifying. It's the combination of a lot of testimony. The clerk comes and offers, through her, the medical records. There's nurses testifying behind curtains, so their identities are maintained, they're confidential. And so there's a lot of moving parts. This is happening over days, the testimony regarding these two infants. So mom has the emergency C-section. The babies are born. She goes to see them about 12, 1 o'clock. And this is just a few hours after she gives birth. So she's not holding these babies or anything like that. Not yet. So she goes back to the maternity ward, and later on that evening, mom and dad are in a side room and they're watching television. And a nurse comes in and says, "Oh, you need to get to the NICU right away. You need to get down to the neonatal intensive care unit right away. They're resuscitating baby A, who's a little boy. They're resuscitating your little boy, and they actually need your permission to discontinue resuscitation. Things are not going well." Can you imagine? Oh my God, getting that news. So the parents rush down to the neonatal intensive care unit, followed by grandma. Here comes grandma. Yeah, grandma said she went to they're all there at the resuscitation. Grandma said there was tons of medical people there, tons of medical personnel. And they were all asking, can we discontinue the resuscitation? Mom was being told, listen, if the baby survives, it's going to have brain damage. So finally, meanwhile, she's like, no, don't let my baby die. Don't let my baby die. And they finally convince her. And so she agrees to stop the resuscitation efforts, and the baby passes away. So sad. But here's a little timeline of what happens to baby A. So the baby gets to the nursery, level 1, or like I said before, they have 4 rooms. The room number 1 is, where you have 1 nurse to 1 baby. This is the highest level of care in this hospital for these babies. Then as they become less dependent, they go into level 2, and then 3 and 4, those are the babies. The nurses might be taking 2 or 3, maybe even 4 babies per nurse in those rooms. But in the room 1, it's 1 nurse to 1 baby. So the day shift nurse, she hands off her baby at 7:30 p.m. to Lucy Letby, whose shift begins at 8. But they have that 30 minutes of overlap, so the day shift nurse can give report to the night shift nurse. So now the day shift nurse is giving report to Lucy Letby, who's going to take care of baby A that night. Now during the day, they had the day shift nurse had fed the baby some breast milk. Now I'm presuming this is through a nasogastric tube, but I don't know. I couldn't find those details. I don't know if this baby had a because a lot of times you don't want them, these little small babies, you don't want them to expend a lot of calories. And these babies burn a lot of calories trying to drink, trying to suck on the milk. So what they'll do is they will put a tube down the nose, and it goes down the esophagus into the stomach. It doesn't really hurt the baby. And they just put, a little bit of fluid in there to start, maybe 10 cc's. Like an ounce of fluid is 30 cc's. Like if you drink a cap of NyQuil, the little white cap that comes on the bottle of NyQuil, that's 30 cc's. So that might be giving this baby like 10 cc's of breast milk. They take it out, they thaw it, and then they give the breast milk to the mom. Or they take the breast milk from the mom, freeze it, thaw it, and then they put it into this tube and they let it go in slowly to the baby's stomach. So the baby had that on the day shift. And when Lucy Letby comes on, here's what she records. Care taken over at 8 p.m. Emergency equipment checked. CPAP 5 to 6 centimeters, stable, jittery. Okay, so by now this baby's, although baby's, A was doing well on the CPAP, as I explained before, the baby was getting oxygen through this CPAP. Now, I don't get oxygen through mine, but in the hospital, you can administer oxygen through those CPAP machines to the babies and to adults if they need it. So, and she said the baby was jittery. Now, sometimes when a baby's jittery, it means their blood sugar's low. At 8:20 p.m., she documents, Lucy Letby documents. Now, this is all stuff that she didn't document at that time. This is stuff she documented the next morning after the baby's already dead. She goes back and documents what I'm telling you right now happened at these particular times. So at 8:20 p.m., she said the baby's hands and feet were white. The baby was centrally pale. Now, what a nurse means by centrally, that means their trunk, their upper body, their abdomen, not their arms and their legs. The other part is pale. The other parts, she said, are white. That's not good. And she says poor perfusion. Well, poor perfusion means the blood's not getting to those extremities. It's not circulating the way it's supposed to be circulating. Then she documents making nil, N-I-L, respiratory effort which means the baby's not breathing. Baby's not making any respiratory effort, not breathing, and no heart rate detected. So at 8:30 p.m., there's a documented crash, meaning the baby collapsed. Everybody that testified said this was very quick, very sudden deterioration. And at 8:58, after all of those attempts, almost 30 minutes of attempts to resuscitate this baby, the baby A is declared deceased. Now, Lucy Letby, with the parents' permission, takes the baby's footprints, and this is not unusual. This is what we do. You take the footprints of the baby, you take a lock of their hair, and we would take photographs, and we would put them in a little kit, so to speak, to give the parents if they wanted it. So she did that, and you also give the parents an opportunity, because this mother, by the time this baby is dead, has never held this baby. So you give the parents an opportunity to hold the baby and say goodbye. You wash the baby, you put the baby in a blanket and a t-shirt, and then you take the baby to mom. And so Lucy did all that night. She did the footprints, got the lock of hair, took pictures, fixed up the baby, took it to the parents, and said, here's your baby. And then they spend a period of time with the baby to say their goodbyes. They've got their mementos, and then Lucy took the baby to the morgue. That's the process. Nothing nefarious there. So the next night, 27 hours later, now in between that night and the next night, there are several text messages that Lucy makes to her friends saying that she was asked by her supervisors if she could work a split shift. And so apparently it is not unusual for this unit not to have enough nursing staff, because they had 3 babies that needed an elevated level of care, so they just didn't have enough staff. So they asked Lucy, can you work extra? And she said, yes, I will. So she's telling her friends, I got to work tonight, I got to work tomorrow night, we're understaffed. It's a lot of texts about staffing and how busy they were that night and the next night. So the next night happens. This is the first night. The babies were born on June 8th, 2015. Now this is June 9th, going into the 10th of 2015. 27 hours later, after baby A dies, Lucy Letby, that night, she was assigned to one of the other rooms, not the level 1 room where she would be 1-to-1 with baby B. Baby B was still in that room, number 1. Because remember, baby B had not done as well as baby A coming out of the delivery. So they're still watching baby B very intently, although stable. The baby's got CPAP through the nasal prong, and which requires that baby to have its own nurse. Little girl. So she had her own nurse. Lucy was assigned to 2 other babies in a different room. But here's the other thing that happens is, depending on the level of the nurse taking care of the baby, remember Lucy's a band 6 nurse, which is it's pretty high up there. She's one of the more experienced nurses on the shift. So she oftentimes, as the more experienced nurse, may have to co-sign for medications, do blood gases, do some things that the other nurses aren't really able to do, or maybe the other nurses are busy and she would volunteer to go do these things. So Lucy's in another room, supposed to be in another room. However, at 11:30-ish, we find out that baby B is discovered with her CPAP dislodged. It was out of her nose, and her oxygen level is at 75%. Now, if you've ever gone to the emergency room or you've gone to the doctor and that nurse puts that thing on your finger, she'll say, give me your finger, and she puts that clip on your finger. What she's doing is she's reading the oxygen level that's in your blood, and it should say 99, it should be between 95 and 100. If not, there's an issue. Well, this baby's said 75. We used to have to put them on their little finger or their toes or their foot because they were so tiny. We would wrap it around their little foot, and then it would kind of tape on. It was made like of a bandage material, and it would just tape on to their foot and stay on their foot. So baby B's was reading 75. So they quickly gave the baby oxygen and put the prongs back in her nose, and then she recovered. She was doing okay. Then along comes Lucy Letby. At 12:05, she is asked to assist this nurse with getting a bag of feed hung. Now, what that means is that this little girl, the baby girl, is getting her nutrition through an IV. That means because of her breathing issues, they didn't really want to feed her yet solid food. So they were giving her nutrition through an IV. So that bag had to be hung. And Lucy was Johnny on the spot to do it. The nurse taking care of the baby testifies she was occupied doing something. I'm not sure what it was. Then at 12:05, Lucy co-signs for this bag of fluid to go up. At 12:16, Lucy Letby draws blood gases. Now that's where you take and you go into an artery and you actually draw a little bit of blood. It's very, very painful. Draw a little bit of blood, and that actually shows you the true oxygen level in the baby's blood. And they're done at periodic intervals on these babies. At 12:30, all of a sudden, the baby's O2 is down to 50%. That little monitor on her hand, on her little finger or toes or whatever, is down to 50. It's reading 50. That's an issue. And the baby was mottled. Now, what it means when a baby is mottled is if you've ever seen a baby when they're cold, their skin turns like white and purplish. There's spots of red and purple on their skin. We call that mottling. So the baby looked mottled and was not breathing. So they had to begin resuscitation and start the baby on a ventilator. And this all happened pretty quickly. But 27 hours after her brother passes away, this happens to her. Now she goes onto a ventilator. At 2:40 a.m., it's recorded that her color had almost resolved and she was stable. And she survived this event. Now, Dad testified that he recalled a nurse named Lucy explaining to him what the baby monitors were. So he did remember who this Lucy person was. What else am I missing to tell you here? So the experts, here's what the experts do. The experts that are hired by the government in this case, they hire two of them, two very, very qualified neonatal consultant doctors. And one of them will review all these cases. So one of them reviewed cases of baby A and baby B and drew a conclusion. Now, once that doctor is done with his or her review, it's turned over to a second doctor to see if they concur with the first doctor. And in these two cases, they both concurred that these babies had been administered air into their IV lines, air embolisms, and that's why they passed away. Someone injected air into these babies. Now, I wanted to read to you, I gotta find my phone, that they did interview Lucy Letby, and I wanted to read to you what she had to say about baby A and baby B. Let me find it. Here we go. Sorry about this. This took place in 2018, 3 years after the events. Letby stated that she remembered that shift. She gave details of the handover and long line administration. The long line administration means that the baby had an IV line that went into their belly button. They call that a long line in the UK. And that's how they're getting their fluids. She checked the fluids, and nurse colleague had the bag out. They noticed child A was pale and mottled and put out a crash call. Full resuscitation attempts followed. She said child A had been a little bit jittery in appearance and believed it due to low blood sugar levels. That's not uncommon. Said a colleague was there with fluids at the handover. Asking why fluids were a priority, Letby said child A had gone a few hours without fluids and that wasn't ideal. Letby said child A went pale after a colleague had connected the fluids. Said child A had gone pale without about 5 minutes after the fluids were administered. She said child A had a rash-like appearance, which she put as being the result of an infection or being cold. That's where the baby A became mottled the day before. He was more pale than the areas of the mottling, agreed that others had noticed the mottling. She said she could not recall child A's resuscitation. She could not recall the name of the nurse who, she said, attached the fluids. Agreed, she had been taught to prime lines so that air could not get in. Denied having done so for child A's long line. Said she didn't know exactly what an air embolism was. What? How does she not know what an air embolism? Everyone knows what that is. Called her relationship with the child's parents strictly professional and could not explain or remember why she had searched for mom's name on Facebook several times in the following weeks. So, like I said, baby B survives and they take their daughter home. And following that, Lucy Letby actually looks them up on Facebook, these parents, And later, years later, when Lucy Letby's home is searched, she has the handover sheet. There's a sheet, like a little cheat sheet that, where you can take notes when the other nurse is handing the baby over to you for your shift. You can take notes. She had that shift saved at her home. Now, it doesn't become part of the medical records. That's your notes. You can take it home. I never did. I just tossed it, It's just weird. Anyway, why was she saving it for? So Lucy goes on to say discoloration of child B was different than that of child A. She did not recall having concerns for child B or alarms going off. She confirmed she would have handled child B to an extent for medication and to attach lines. She could not recall how upset the child A and B's parents were at the time. How do you not recall that? I don't know. Okay. Sorry, that's my clock. We'll wait. Somebody asked me, is that your doorbell? No, it's my clock. Okay. So that is baby A and baby B. Next week, I will continue on. We'll try to get a few more babies in there. It covers almost the entire alphabet, guys. So stay tuned. So that is baby A and baby B. If you enjoyed the content, please don't hesitate to give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments of my commentary of the story of Lucy Letby, the trial of Lucy Letby. And I hope to see you in my regular show, Crafting and Crime Daily, where we're covering the trial of the ice cream man out of Tampa, Florida, Hillsborough County, Florida. So see you on Monday. I will be live tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central Time, just to chit-chat, show you, talk to my fellow crafters, what you're working on, show off your stuff. Anyway, hope to see you then.